This is the Mr. Landscaper Vegetable Garden Drip Kit, and we're going to install it here in our garden. Now there's a multiple of components that come along with this, including an instructional DVD. Very simple to install. We're going to work on from the on our top end of the garden. We've got yacons. We're going to put the drip irrigation in, the tomatoes, peppers. We're going to bypass the cabbage here simply because the production is not what we think or expected. So we're not going to utilize the drip tape, the drip emitters on that, and then we'll do the peppers and we'll see how far we get. Now, like I said, there's multiple components to this drip system. We're also going to incorporate and set up some drip systems in our 60-gallon grow bags here. So what we already have is a feeder line, which is draped out on the driveway because it was been curled up in the box here. So we're getting that so it relaxes in the heat of the sun. We'll mold it to a straight line, and we'll run that inside of the perimeter of the fence here inside the garden. We've got an you can buy a manual timer. This does not come with this particular kit, but is manufactured by Mr. Landscaper. Or you can also purchase a digital timer that runs off a battery, and you can set up the times that you want it to go on and go off. This is the drip emitters. For every foot there is a drip emitter inside of the hose, and it produces a ½ gallon per hour. So it's very efficient watering. And we'll get to the other components now. Mr. Landscaper is made in the United States, USA, if that's something that you're concerned with. That is a good thing for them. You can get them in some Lowe's stores, and some Lowe's stores won't carry them. You can also go to Mr. Landscaper. You can find that link on our website on the right-hand side, as well as in the show notes below. So we're going to go up to the front where the main faucet is underneath the porch, and we're going to start putting this thing all together, and really easy to do. Okay, for our system setup, the faucet's underneath the porch here, and we're going to hook it up. We've got our feeder hose here, our 50-foot poly 1/2-inch tubing, and they have all the pieces you need in the little bag here. And then if you're confused, on the side of the box they indicate how many pieces and what the term is. There are instructions, well actually also on the paperwork here, it indicates what all of the pieces and sizes and item numbers are in case you need more for the project that you're working on. Again, you get a DVD that explains it, and some more instructions here on the back, as well as on the back of the box here. And again, you can make this as elaborate or as simple as you choose to for your setup. So what we're going to do here is we need to take all these pieces out. There is a filter that is included, and that is what this is. Let's see, filter comes out here. It's 150 mesh filter, so it catches very small particles. Because if you don't have the filter, regardless if you're running on pond water, well water, municipal water, if these things get clogged, they are very difficult to get unclogged, and you may not know that they're clogged for many days if you run this system, because you're not seeing water spray up in the air unless you check each one of these individually. So we'll put that back in there. All right, so that goes on this. So let's, so we want to first put, this is the backflow prevention, which we do have one of these already on our unit here, but we're going to go ahead and use the one that they provide as well. And this is the pressure reduction valve, which takes your normal pressure and reduces it to 25% or 25 pounds per square inch. So we put those two together. And with this system here, you have a washer with a filter there that prevents particles, as well as you will have this filter that I just showed, the 150 mesh filter. And you don't want to, bear down on these extremely, but you want to be in finger tight. Now this is a plastic, this is not a metal or a brass, so over tightening will destroy the threads on it. So you do want to be conscious of that. I've got the backflow prevention valve, I've got the pressure reduction on it, and I have the filter put on it as well. So at this point I could directly hook this up into the system here, but I am going to put the timer, manual timer system on here. And you can hook this up with a Y or multiple valves that you can run multiple systems on at different times with the timer. So I'm going to hook all of this up and then I'll twist it on at one time. Now with this manual timer, it goes up to 120 minutes that you just crank it to the time that you want it to, and it will click down like a kitchen timer, a tick, 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 and then it'll shut off all by itself. Okay, now that we've got this unit all put together, we're going to use our faucet fitting, which is going to run off of our filter and then go into our main poly tube here. And the unit, it's got threads on one side and a washer in there that's going to thread into there. And then it's a friction fit thread that fits into the 1/2 inch poly tube, and then you tighten it down. So you don't need any screwdrivers or washers or clamps or anything like that. There we go, pops in there. And then we just tighten it down until it's finger tight. And then we're going to attach, it onto our filter system here. Okay, now that that's on, we're going to turn the water on and make sure everything flows through. Now, with this manual system, with this manual timer, it's not going to, if you turn and put a number of 5 minutes on it, it's going to continue to run water through it for 5 minutes unless you turn your faucet on or off. So we're going to turn the water on, and then we're going to run, and we want to flush and make sure water's coming out of the end down there before we start hooking up our system, making sure that we have water coming through all of our units here. And then we're going to put a drip system in our raised bed in the front yard, and then we'll start lining the beds in the big garden with it. All right, so we tested the system, and they provide you a clamp to close off the end, and it's simply this. After you test it, you want to flush it out, and then there's this clamp that they have. All you do is just pinch it off. You bend it down, put pipe there, and no more drip. You're shut off. And you need to have this on here when you install it so that the pressure is regulated, because if you just had this continue blowing out, you're not going to have any drips and you're going to be wasting a whole lot of water. Okay, so this is the front yard raised bed that we've got a variety of different squashes that we've got planted here. Here's our main pipe. So what we're going to do is we'll puncture a hole in the pipe, put a coupler, run our vinyl tubing to the bed, and then we're going to run our drip emitters in a pattern to where it'll cover all the plants. So that's real easy to do. Again, the tools are provided for you. I'm just going to go at the nearest point and just push in, pull out. So I'm going to put my coupler, and these couplers have an edge to where it will fit in there. All right. Now I'm going to run my vinyl tubing, and all of this is friction fit. So you're not having to apply clamps or screwdrivers. If you've ever installed piping before, it can be a very tedious process. With this, they make it very, very easy to do. All right, so that's pushed on there. Now I'll just run as much as I need behind the milkweed here until we get to the bed. All right. Then you can cut it with any type of device. I just happen to have garden shears. Want to make sure we get it where we need it first, and then I'll go ahead and cut it. Oh, that cuts really nice. Okay. Now I can use another coupler, or I can use an on-off valve. I'm going to use another coupler simply because this bed here, we're going to want it watered all the time. So that's what I'm going to use here. Another coupler. Just friction fit. Now untie our drip system. And there's 100 feet here. And I'm going to first push it in to our coupler there, okay. And every foot there's a dripper. So in this instance, we don't need one every foot, but that's the way it's installed, and it will be fine. So I'm just going to unravel this, and then the goof plug can also be utilized to plugging the end of this when we get to a point where we've used, or we're at a stopping point. These are the goof plugs. Just a plug with a little, it'll go on the end here. So I'll put that right there so I don't lose it. Now with this here, you might have to finesse it a little bit because of it being curled up. I'm just going to get a general idea of where I want it, and then we'll go from there. All right. Now they do come with these stakes. Now if you're doing long runs, it's not that big of a deal. You can use dirt or rocks if you run out of these. But for this instance here, I'm going to go ahead, and they snap on there, and you can press them in the soil. Works. What I'm going to do here. Now, like I said, they come every 12 inches is a drip emitter. So my first emitter is not until this point here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this up so I can get that first emitter in the center of them two plants. And then this emitter here, you just kind of play with it. There we go. I want to get it as close to the root system as possible. Now with this, the way I've got this planted, I can just put it right between the plants. Just kind of finesse it, a little trial and error, figure out what's going to work best. Oh, there we go, it clicked. All right. And then, I got this back here. I'm going to run it between these two plants. And now you can cover this up with mulch, and that's what we'll end up doing. Laid down, okay. Now on the back here, when you're going to cut, let me get my goof plug here. When you're going to take a point where you're going to cut it on this, the drip line, you want to kind of think about if you're going to try to maximize your usage of each emitter. I've got an emitter that's going to be between these plants here. So that one's there. Then I've got another one right here. So what I can do is I can cut at about 1 inch past that emitter, and that'll give me about 8 more inches of line here that I can utilize in other portions, so it's not directly in line with a drip emitter as soon as I hook it up. So I'm going to cut it back here. All right. Then I'm going to insert my goof plug, and it just pushes in. That's the way the goof plug looks. You're just going to, there we go, fit it in. I'll run this back through here. All right, now that portion is done. Now there is, as it gets, the sun gets on this will push it back down, as well as I'm going to turn it on now, and we're going to see the water drip in this raised bed, and we'll go from there. So at this point, I've got the yacons run. I've got this one strand of tomatoes run, and I'm going to run this, these 2 rows of peppers. Now, in the kit, you can get, we talked about the vinyl tubing here that we used up in the front there to run from the feeder line into the bed to hook up to our drip emitters. In this particular setup that we have here, we're not using the vinyl tubing because we can hook directly into the feeder line with our drip emitters and run down our rows. That does 2 things. One, that saves on installation time, and 2, it saves on couplers that you would need. We only have 1 coupler here instead of having a coupler that's going from the feeder line to the vinyl tubing, then another coupler that would go to the drip line. And whenever you're doing runs like this with tomato cages, it's easiest to go ahead and run line, hook it up to your feeder line, hook it up to the main line, run it down, figure out where you need to cut it, then take it back and feed it underneath and through all the cages. That's the easiest way I've found. And the way I've fortunately got it spaced out, is just purely coincidental, is that this right here is exactly where a drip emitter is at. So I cut it right behind it, put a goof plug in it. Now with a setup that we've got now, we're running into rows that have double plants in them. We can do a similar thing. We can cut a corner and save on couplers. Now you can go buy couplers from their website. There's the parts number in the system, but we want to try to utilize as much as we can and get as much out of the package that we have available, and I know you would as well. So what we're first going to do here is we're going to take our coupler, put it into our drip here. First of all, I want to see kind of where, okay, we're going to have a drip where there's no plant, but that's, okay, I see, okay. Here's what we can do. We can move this feeder hose kind of back and forth as we need it, so that drip will be, that first drip will be right at a root system. So kind of keep that in mind if you want to play the get as much out of it as possible game. So we put the coupler into the pipe. Now, if you, for some reason, do this wrong, you can take a knife and gently slice the brown pipe, the drip line, and then you can cut that portion out and reinstate or reinstall the coupler wherever you need to. But you just got to be careful, because if you cut too far, you're going to cut into the coupler, and it's going to be inefficient. It's not going to work right. Okay, so here's a little trick that I've thought about how to do this and get the maximum out of my drip system. So I'm going to poke the hole there. Now I'm going to run. You can run on one side, you can go back and forth. It really makes no difference. I'm just going to kind of, as I see needed, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth. Now, at the end here, we could simply cut it, put a goof plug in it, start another line. But if you're buying this kit and you don't want to buy any accessories to it, what you can do to extend some of the parts and pieces is not cut it, loop it around. You're going to have a drip emitter potentially in the center there. Well, not really, that's going to be pretty close to the roots. And then just run it back, and then once you get to that end, then put your goof plug in, and that way you've saved on goof plugs, you've saved on couplers, you've saved on you're getting the maximum out of your drip line as you can. I may have to tighten this a little bit, but that's the general consensus there. That's a basic tip there to help get the most out of your drip line and not having to cut it at the end of every row. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, that'll work just fine. And make sure it's down. And then I'm just going to cut it there, put the goof plug in it, and keep going. So with our system in the ground here, as you've seen, we installed it just like the instructions show. Now with the grow bags, if you have a situation that you have places that are outside of where your line's going to be at, they do have a container gardening kit that you can utilize. Well, with our system, we used our vinyl lining. Underground, we buried it, and we brought it up into our grow bags here. And I just looped it around the tomatoes like I would over in the garden. With the beets here, it was a little more difficult because I've got beets planted in a lot of different places. Ideally, this would be something you would install at the time of planting, and it would be at soil level. So in order to ensure that I'm getting water to all the beets, I simply just took the coils and just laid on top of the foliage. Now, I'll work it down eventually, but I'm not going to press it down because that can hurt the vegetables that you may have in your area that you're growing. So it's just right now kind of covering, and I see where water's going around the roots, and that's good. And the peppers, I just wrapped it around, and I had a little extra here, about a foot and a half extra that I just threw in the center, and it will water them. With this system here, I included an on-off valve where, because this is good compost, it's going to absorb the water and hold the water much better than a traditional native soil would. So at the point where I feel that this is adequately watered, I can just shut that off and continue to let the other system run. Mr. Landscaper Vegetable Garden Drip Kit, a phenomenal piece of equipment that will save you water, save time in the garden once you get the system set up, made in the USA. And in the fall now, you want to keep in mind, in the fall, you want to blow the system out. You can roll it up, you can blow the system out to where you have no air in it, and it'll be fine for the winter. But if you're going to blow the system out with compressed air, you want to make sure that there's no water in it if you're in an area that freezes a lot, like here in southeast Wisconsin. So if you've never heard of Mr. Landscaper, if you're looking for a drip irrigation system, they have this particular model. They have patio models, as well as above ground sprinkling system, which we will implement on the back side of the garden when we utilize all the components for the system that we have here.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.